Fatal Fury City of the Wolves was not able to be that big game and hit that would put SNK back at the top as one of the best fighting game developers out there and a leading company in the gaming industry, like they used to be in the late 90s and early 2000s, next to other big names like Capcom. But let's not forget that this is not the first rodeo for SNK, and they have been trying to recover their status as a company and be a big name again in the gaming industry since 15 years ago, when they almost got bankrupt by the development of the King of Fighters 13. And only in that time window we got the King of Fighters 14, the King of Fighters 15, SNK Heroines, Samurai Shodown, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, and even Terry on Smash Brothers and Terry and Mai on a Street Fighter. And it can be quite sad to say this if you are an SNK fan like me and many others that are watching this video, but it seems like the most successful projects that were related to SNK in any way in the last 15 to 20 years were the presence of SNK characters as guests on other video games that were not developed by SNK. So in this video we are gonna discuss the obvious, and that is that SNK needs to take a different approach when it comes to developing fighting games, and we're gonna discuss all the ways in which they could recover their biggest status as a fighting game developer and how they could succeed in both the mid and long term as a company. Let's get into it. I personally think that SNK has three main options or roads that they can take to be a big video game developer and fighting game dev again and never be forced to go back to this and actually be successful. And the first road that we are going to talk about is around the King of Fighters series. I would argue that it is very obvious, especially since the last 10 years, that the King of Fighters series is the strongest intellectual property that SNK owns. People remember SNK because of the King of Fighters, especially when you talk to someone that is not that close to SNK as a company and their video games. People naturally associate SNK with the King of Fighters name, its mechanics, their characters, the big rosters, and how fun they can be. And there is obviously a big pool of people that will be really happy with a super high budget AAA KOF game. And it kind of feels like the King of Fighters is the Street Fighter or the Tekken of SNK. It is that big face and name that can make them big again as a company, as a fighting game developer, and they need to take advantage of KOF as a series to attract the biggest possible amount of people into SNK fighting games. And yes, I did see the Art of Fighting teaser and I love it. I'm super happy for it, but I don't think that AOF is enough as an IP to put SNK back on the map. So yes, I do think that if we go the original IP route for SNK to be big again, it needs to be the King of Fighters series. And hey, wait, why are you watching the Dragon Ball FighterZ intro if we are talking about the future SNK? There's no relationship there, right? Well, this is the second route that SNK can take, making a big licensed anime fighter with the format of maybe the King of Fighters, a 3v3 non-tag fighting game. It would probably be a huge success if executed right, and there are still so many big anime IPs out there that deserve a fighting game that could be even bigger than games like Dragon Ball FighterZ. Like for example, One Piece. There is no traditional fighting game for One Piece out there, and it is one of the most consumed animes all over the world, not only in Japan. Millions of people watch or read One Piece every single day of their life. So it is very obviously one of the most profitable and famous intellectual properties from Japanese media all over the world. And it is not only One Piece, you could also make a fighting game around Naruto, for example, another anime that is insanely famous and has gotten a ton of video games that were arena fighters, but never a traditional fighting game. And there's just even more. You could also maybe make one with Saint Seiya, whatever big IP that you can think of, and that is one of the biggest pieces of media in all over the world as a subgenre. And I just think that if you make a good anime fighter, you can make your company blow up, just like it happened with Dragon Ball FighterZ and Arc System Works. And there is just so many ones that you could take, but of course the biggest ones are probably both One Piece and Naruto as IPs to make a fighting game, and many people would buy a Naruto or One Piece fighting game. Believe me, they would probably not even care if the game is good, man. But of course it needs to be good, okay? It needs to be a good game. And the thing is also that if you make this, you can then translate this formula into other of your original IPs if you know that it's actually something that people want to consume, just like also ArcSys is doing with other of their games after DBFC. So I just think that it is a viable route that could be really good for SNK. But the thing is, I don't know if they're actually going to be able to kind of like get their hands on a big anime IP. You know, I don't know if a company is going to actually want to give them the rights to make a game instead of just doing it with someone else. So in that sense, maybe SNK will need to do a lot of stuff, you know, and put a lot of effort into creating kind of like company partnerships to see if they can maybe make a license-based fighting game and not an original one. And maybe it could be also on something that is not anime, you know, I'm thinking of that specifically because it is a trending thing, you know, in terms of hobbies and what people like anime is big now. So it is one of the biggest projects that you can do when it comes to licensed fighting games. But yeah, I just think that route number 2, it is to actually make a licensed fighting game and not an original one. And now we get into the final option for SNK, in my opinion, which is why you're seeing Terry on Street Fighter. And I believe that the last chance that SNK has, if not doing another of the two things that I just said, is to do Capcom versus SNK 3. Now, I think that this is gonna happen eventually, but what do I mean about making Capcom versus SNK 3 themselves? Because Capcom versus SNK 1 and 2 were developed and published by Capcom, not by SNK, and SVC Chaos was the game or the crossover with Capcom that SNK developed, which was the less successful one. So I believe that if SNK wants to go back at the top and they don't want to base that on the King of Fighters series or on a licensed anime game, they would need to be the ones that are in charge of the Capcom vs SNK, you know, series coming back. It is one of the most beloved crossovers in the fighting game genre by a huge amount of people, and we all know how much track and how much people go into a game only because it has Capcom and a Street Fighter characters on them. So a lot of people will probably be much more open to try an SNK game if it had Ryu, Ken, you know, Chun-Li, and even with the case of Fatal Fury having those characters, I think that City of the Wolves had such a bad reputation right at launch that it doesn't even matter anymore that it has a Street Fighter characters on it. Like, people are not gonna give it a try because there's just so many reasons for them to not even touch the game. And that is, you know, the hard truth about fighting games. Like, the first impressions matter a lot. And believe me that with the celebrity fiasco, with all the problems that the game had overall in terms of quality of life and how people just didn't really like it, City of the Wolves has some of the worst reputation out there, but people love Capcom in a way that is kind of like almost religious. Street Fighter V at launch was one of the worst fighting games of all time, literally like the most verbose stuff ever, and it is still sold like bread. People still played it because it is a Street Fighter, and until today, people don't really have necessarily the worst memories about SF5 because it wasn't a Street Fighter game, and people are much more forgiving and kind of have, you know, like higher levels of empathy towards Capcom and the games, and that is not something that SNK has at the moment. Like, people have a very bad reputation about SNK overall when it comes to developing fighting games, at least from non-SNK fans. So if they take the spot on making Capcom vs SNK 3, they will need to kick it off the park. It would need to be the perfect fighting game. But I think that if that happens, it would also put SNK really back at the top of the mountain in the fighting game industry once again. So that was the video and the discussion around SNK, guys. I really want SNK to be big and be a big name in the fighting game industry as a dev again, but there is a lot of stuff that they need to get right, including what project they do, which is what we discussed in this video, but also many other stuff. They need to get their graphics, you know, and like graphical fidelity up, you know, it needs to be bigger. The quality of life of the next fighting game that they throw up there needs to be really high, you know, kind of like SF6 level in terms of the general features of the game. And there's just so much that SNK needs to get right so that people actually give their game a try. I hope that it happens because I want to see SNK succeed and be big again. So if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, and let me know in the comments what you think about the future of SNK, and see you on the next one, guys.